I think that's why it's so important to find a friend within the chapter to kind of
Yeah, I was going
be
to
an
mention.
objective person because you can get your emotions wrapped up in that kind of stuff. This is what my mama and my grandmama told me, that sort of thing.
I
But
know, I
right,
know.
and
So your best friend in the chapter is going to be the chapter registrar. She is going to be a crackpot genealogist, and she will know where to look for those records, and she will guide you through that process.
you are listening to Historyman, the platform for historians, curators, and authors to tell their stories of the American Revolution. Walk in the footsteps of heroes and proclaim freedom reigns. On today's episode, we are with Julie Hardaway, Chairman of Protocol and Chairman of the State Speaker's Staff for the South Carolina Society Daughters of the American Revolution. So, welcome, Julie.
Thank you for having me, Eric.
Well, I'm curious for those who are thinking about getting into the DAR, and you have done a lot of research, and I would think some of these people weren't even mentioned. You didn't find them in the pension applications because a lot of those pension applications were made after a lot of them died. So, how did you track them to be able to document it through the DAR and get it passed through the rigorous vetting process that the DAR has?
Well, fortunately for me, a lot of these men already had many, many descendants who had joined the DAR on those lines.
Yeah. Right.
So I had not proved a new patriot at all. I have proved a new child of the patriot. And of course, when you do that, you have to submit proof that that person is the child of that patriot. If you're lucky, there'll be a will that mentions the children of the patriot.
Where would you find those wills, though?
Well, different places. The best thing is to do it online. You can use familysearch.org. That's a free website. Of course, there's ancestry.com. But familysearch.org, I call it going in the back door of that one. When I get on there, I go down to see all of the records. And then I go to that particular, you have to tell it United States, and then you have to tell it, the state of Georgia, and then you have to tell it Jefferson County or whatever county you're looking for. And then you can go on there and look and see, do they have wills? Do they have deeds? Do they have marriage records that go that far back? And if you're lucky, you'll find it in there.
Well, I know that a lot of people. You have a lot of people had the same names, right? And so it really is
Yes.
kind of hard
Yes,
to.
that's when dates are so important.
I see.
Date.
Okay.
You would not have had let's say you wouldn't have had a 14-year-old that served as a colonel during the revolution. Those were going to
Right.
be older, more established men.
So
Yeah.
a lot of people go and they go, well, I've got somebody that is in my lineage that I want to submit an application for, and it's a very daunting thing for these women that come to my booth in the different places that I go to. And I said, well, they do have resources at the DAR, especially the local chapters, and that they can help you. There's usually somebody within the local chapter that can say, "Hey, I know
Yeah.
somebody. Let's work it out this way." Tell me how you know Miss Smith comes up to you and says, "I'm interested in trying to find my people." Well, how would you tell them to go about doing that?
Right. So you start with yourself and you go backwards in time. So you get birth, marriage, and death records for each generation that you can, each generation that exists. Now, the earlier you get into the 1800s, you'll find marriage records, but you're not going to find death certificates and things like that. Those are kind of 20th century documents. But anyway, the best thing is to just start and go, as far back as you can on that one person. Like, so your parents, you should be able to get if they passed away. You should be able to get death certificates on your parents and your grandparents. When you get back to your great grandparents, you might have to go to other records like census records, or they do let you use books, but you have to be really careful about like local history books, because they have to be sourced, which means they have to give you footnotes, or give you documentation of where they got that information.
So
Um,
in my family, we came out of the mountains of North Carolina, and there was a lot of birthing in the cabins and stuff like that. And
yes,
the family records go through the Bibles, the Bible that's passed
yes,
down to the family member. Right now my first cousin has our family Bible, and we've got copies of those pages, but we don't actually have the Bible.
right.
Um,
You can use that. I would recommend right now that you get the title page from the Bible showing the year that it was published,
oh,
the year that it was printed. That's very important.
okay.
Because it helps. You don't want a modern day Bible that people have just written things in that they think are true. You want a Bible that, these early settlers would have taken with them, from point A to point B,
Hmm.
and continue to write things in. Like what you mentioned, a lot of them would be married by a minister of the gospel, but that didn't get registered at the courthouse.
That's
So
right. Right.
maybe it's just written in the Bible. But the DAR is pretty persnickety about that. They look at the handwriting in the Bible, they look at the year the Bible was published. Um, they look at things like whoever was writing in that Bible, did they know? I mean, they probably knew their parents. Did they know their grandparents?
Hmm.
How far back in time did that, and did the grandparent live, to be 80, 90, 100, where these children would have known that person?
Yeah.
So, they are pretty persnickety about it, but they're very thorough. They want to make sure that the line is correct, because once somebody does turn up new information, and I have done that before, turned up new information, then they don't kick people out that were already in on that line, but they'll close that line to future generations, so that they can't continue on a line that has been proven to be incorrect.
I think that's why it's so important to find a friend within the chapter to kind of
Yeah, I was going
be
to
an
mention.
objective person, because you can get your emotions wrapped up in that kind of stuff. This is what my mama and my grandmama told me, that sort of thing.
I
But
know, I
right,
know.
and
So your best friend in the chapter is going to be the chapter registrar. She is going to be a crackpot genealogist, and she will know where to look for those records, and she will guide you through that process.
wow, that's great. That's great to have that. So we talked about inculcating the new generation in in the American experience, okay? And you've talked about your ancestors, and I'm always envious of people that are able to track their ancestors back to that pivotal time period in the founding of America, right? And freedom is known in the world in in a very large way because of the that particular conflict and the patriotism of those men and women that fought in that time. What what is a story that resonates with you that really just kind of, I mean, you talked a little bit about your ancestors and stuff, but is there a story that resonates with you that kind of talks about the American experience from that time period?
Oh, wow. Uh, well, I'm just amazed by the women. So I talked to you about Nancy Wilson Lee and about Agnes Wiggum. Um, the things that the women did, while the men were away, or even what they did on their own. I mean, for Agnes Wiggum to raise the cattle like she did, and to sell the beef, to feed the troops, I just think that's really remarkable for a woman to do. In a time period when women didn't really own property, and they couldn't vote, and they couldn't work outside the home. I just think it's remarkable that women did those kind of things. And I didn't have anybody that was in the Edenton Tea Party, but we talked a little bit about that back in the beginning. Those women, what they did in Edenton, that they got together and signed a petition. 51 women signed this petition to boycott tea and English imported fabrics. But that was a radical political move for these women. That was radical. Men participated in boycotts. Women did not do that. These women did.
Well, they certainly.
And then not only that, Penelope Barker, the leader of that group, she mailed that petition to newspapers in England, and they printed it. At first they kind of laughed about it. They thought it was funny that they said, is there another Continental Congress in Edenton too, that's made up of women? They laughed about it, but then there was a letter written from Arthur Ardell to his brother James. Arthur was in England, James was in Rowan County, I believe, Rowan County, North Carolina. But anyway, he mentions that the women were like the Amazonian women, that when they threw a dart, if it hit in the Achilles tendon, it was deadly. And so he mentioned that the women were very powerful. So anyway, I love the stories of the women.
That's a great story. They even made a cartoon of those women, and didn't they say something along the lines?
That's right.
The men of America need to get hold of their women, or something like that. I've always found that to be
the cartoon. It's a caricature, and
right.
It shows an unattended child under the table, who a dog was licking his face, and the dog was urinating on a tea caddy, and there were lots of things also in there. Like, it showed a woman that was drinking out of a punch bowl, which was a perfectly acceptable thing for a man to do, but not for a woman. And there was a woman in the caricature that was holding a gavel. Women didn't run meetings like that, but anyway, what they were saying was, you women need to go home and mind your own business and tend to your families, and not mess around in the world of politics.
Yeah. Well, that didn't go over too well with the women in America, that's for sure. Well, I asked this question of all my guests, and it's a tough question. I wouldn't have thought it would have been that tough, especially with some of the great minds that I've had on my podcast, but it is tough. We take a lot of things for granted these days, but what does freedom mean to you, Julie?
Well, I mentioned that my father was fought in World War II. He was actually in the Pacific Theater and was in the Army Air Corps. He was a bombardier. So he calculated, wind speed, and used the Norden bomb sight to figure out how to, where to drop the bombs. But, what he fought for, and what these Revolutionary War patriots fought for, was, the freedom to have the speech like what we have today, and the freedom to vote our conscience, and the freedom to bear arms, the freedom to practice our own religion, and not be forced into a religion by the state. I just think that, those were some of the things that they fought for. And it's important to me We take them for granted being in this country, but I've traveled all around Europe, and this was in the mid to late 80s, still during the Cold War. And, when you come to a border, you had to go from one country to another, and be inspected and that kind of thing. And we don't even think about that in this country. We travel from state to state, and don't worry about those kind of things. But and I know I'm talking about states, and those were different countries, but it was a stark reminder to me that the freedoms that we have in this country are way different from what other people have in other countries.
Very good. Well, how can people get a hold of you if they want to bring you in to speak at their gathering?
They can send me a Facebook message, Julie Hardaway, on Messenger, or they can email me at JN, N like Nancy, JN Hardaway, HARDAWAY, at BellSouth, BELLSOUTH.net.
Well, you certainly go a lot of places, and you have a lot of hats that you wear, and we feel so very honored that you came on to the Historyman podcast. So thank you very much. Can you think of anything else you want to talk about? I won't stop right here if you want to keep going, because we got 2 episodes on this thing right now. So I'm happy. So whatever you want to do.
Well, I'll just throw one more thing out there.
Okay.
I think it's very important that we teach these things to the younger generation.
Yeah.
My parents taught it to me. Everywhere we went, we were in a big old station wagon. But anyway, everywhere we went, my parents took us to Washington, D.C. They thought it was important for us to see, history and see things in Washington, D.C. That had to do with the founding of our country. But my children, all 4 of them, were in the Children of the American Revolution. And so they grew up hearing these things and knowing these things. They are patriotic. And I just think it's important that we teach them these things that our ancestors sacrificed for us to have the freedoms that we have today. And we cannot forget that.
You're exactly right. We have a responsibility as being the age that we are to pass on and hand off the baton, and not just hand it off from an emotional standpoint, but really teach them and the lessons of the revolution. So thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.